Okay, we're back with Brother Hassan. So this is really interesting stuff. We don't hear a lot about Islam in South Africa as a whole, really, let alone the experience of white Afrikaner South African converts. Um, so man, there's just so many avenues to go through here. So what you talked about, I guess, kind of, we talked about woke culture before we, started the interview and everything, and that was, started was really heavy, 2018 and 2019. Um,
Yeah.
but I do agree that's kind of died down here in North America, and you probably interact with a lot of South African Muslims as well.
Yeah.
Like what has over the last 3 years, like, has that died down? Have they rejected that? Have they, just that totally turned them off from, I guess, the kind of leftist politics?
Um, I think, look, South African Muslim community, at least in my area, in my locality, um, they, you can divide the community into like um, just the general mass of people who, like Elon Musk said, they just like they support the current thing.
Hmm.
So social media plays a big role in this, and
Hmm.
this sort of woke narrative, the machine behind it, it sort of bullies people into accepting certain things out of fear of being cancelled or fear of being labeled a particular way. So, a lot of Muslims have gone along with that, but there's also a very strong scholarly uh, community in Cape Town. There's quite a large amount of Islamic scholars in Cape Town, and for the most part, most of them have taken up a very, I'd say, very uh, non-partisan or very unbiased and objective position, and they've critiqued what needs to be critiqued from an Islamic perspective
Hmm.
quite successfully. A lot of
Hmm.
them. Um, Others are perhaps, went with the sort of leftist narrative, and at the end of the day, you're always going to have people leaning left or right on certain issues. But for the most part, the Muslim community, I'd say, if I have to categorize them into like different groups in relation to their reaction to woke issues, I'd say you'd have like maybe 30% of them who just don't really care. They're just going on with their day-to-day life. And I mean, there's a lot of poverty in South Africa and a lot of social issues. So a lot of people just don't have the privilege of actually worrying about these things. They they're not exposed to it. And
Hmm.
then I'd say maybe a 50% that are kind of more towards the left, and then the other 20% would be people who have some Islamic background and some philosophical training and who can actually think critically. And most of them were sort of, had a very good Islamically grounded opinion on these things, and they, critiqued and criticized whatever has to be criticized, and warned people against, veering off too far towards the extremes on either end.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, what about, I guess, Islam in general, in terms of like the public sphere, like, work environments and things like, because in North America, like, I'd say for the most part, like, workplaces and everything have been accommodating, for Muslims in terms of being able to pray at work, or taking Friday off. Like, in South Africa, does it depend on where you work, or is it, like, is in general, would you say that South Africa has been accommodating to Muslims who work there? Like, I assume there's no anti-hijab
Um,
laws or anything, or.
no, no. Actually, we're very privileged in South Africa in terms of freedom of religion and expressing our religion. So there's uh, the Western Cape is kind of like an exceptional case because for a long time the Western Cape has been run by an opposition political party. The ANC is the dominant political party in South Africa. They're the national government. But the Western Cape for quite a long time has been run by the Democratic Alliance, which is one of the main opposition parties. and they tend to lean more towards a sort of a Western liberal style of governance. So they we've had recently some issues with regards to noise laws, like bylaws regarding noise. So there was a case quite recently about them, not banning the adhan, but sort of like fining mosques for the adhan, for noise pollution, that kind of thing. But that's been recently they've rolled that back, so they've cancelled that bylaw. And in terms of practicing Islam in the workplace, I suppose it depends where you work. If you work for in any kind of capacity as a civil servant in a government office, government position, then you'd probably have a bit more leeway. And I myself worked as a civil servant for the Western Cape provincial government, and we got on Fridays we did get an extended break, so our lunch break would be extended so that we can go to Jumu'ah. But that was something we'd have to like negotiate with our superiors. But I mean, if you work in the private sector, it's going to vary from case to case. There's a lot of Muslims in the private sector and a lot of Muslim owners of businesses. So if a Muslim owns a business you work at, then you're definitely going to be shut down for Jumu'ah. You'll maybe get some lenient attitude in Ramadan, or you'll get off for Eid, that kind of thing. But as far as government jobs are concerned, you'll have to just take your regular leave days. But in general, the attitude towards Islam and the atmosphere it's a very tolerant and accepting one. It's not there is sort of the veneer of secularism has to be there. It has to appear that no one is being favored over anyone else. So I mean, you're not going to be praying, laying your musalla out in the meeting room and like praying on the table or something. But
exactly.
Obviously but yeah, there's a lot of leeway for you and a lot of freedom of religion and expression.
Okay.
I know in jobs that law enforcement positions and in the military, the beard would be an issue. So you would be expected to shave your beard, and that's just because they have this sort of archaic idea about neatness, military neatness. It's not really anything political or oppressive. And then there was recently a case in the military, in the South African National Defence Force, of a lady. I think she was an admiral in the Navy, a Muslim lady, and there was some problem with her wearing hijab in the workplace, and she ended up taking her employer to court, and she won. So
okay. Wow.
So she got the right to wear hijab in the workplace.
Wow, alhamdulillah. Yeah. What it I guess is Islam kind of seen as like having the opportunity of easing race relations between white and black South Africans, because there's a lot. I mean, from what we hear, about South Africa, especially for the White Afrikaners, is that it's very at times can be dangerous, for their communities. Like there's been murders and like vandalism and things like that. So is this some kind of seen as like a way out from that? I mean, do Muslim communities actually bring these issues up, or is it just kind of too controversial to talk about?
Well, first of all, Islam definitely is the solution to many of these problems, and it's Islam definitely would bring a positive resolution to these things. But the Afrikaner community is just not conscientized towards Islam on any level, really. As far as the other communities, like I said, Muslims in South Africa are a very kind of small minority. Even though we've got a lot of financial power, we've got a lot of business power and buying power, and we've got influence from that avenue. In terms of race politics, most Muslims in South Africa they sort of straddle the fence, depending on their personal beliefs or their personal ideas about race. And I think, Sheikh Ismail Kamdar could maybe correct me on this, and, you can maybe have another conversation about him and ask him what he thinks about it. But from my personal experience, this is just 100% anecdotal. I find that the Indian Muslim community in South Africa tend to be more open to approaching the white community, or they're more likely to share certain political views, or they're more amenable to the ideas of Afrikaners, or more open to actually listening to them and sympathizing with them. Whereas, the sort of small indigenous South African Black Muslim community and the colored community tend to be more on the other side, because they've experienced the other side of race relations. They've had years of South African, the apartheid police force cracking down on them, and all of them have got experience with that. So I suppose it's difficult for them to see the other side, or to take the Afrikaner case seriously. Even though it is, you will find individuals who do some research, who do critical thinking and do their own independent research, and they'll come to the conclusion that there is a case for white South Africans to feel marginalized, and that there is definitely a case of South Africans being, white South Africans being targeted in certain sort of hate crimes. But it's difficult. I can imagine it would be difficult to be open to that idea, coming from years of experiencing the brutality of like a white supremacist government.
Yeah, it seems like the best strategy is just to kind of avoid these conversations as much as humanly possible, and concentrate on Islam as a way out, to allow all these different communities to flourish. From what I could gather from the interview I had with Sheikh Ismail, is that I guess the Muslim community in South Africa, there's just so many different cultures in South Africa, that they've taken like a truly multicultural approach, where like the Zulu and the Xhosa, they bring in things from their culture, the food, the dress. They've created their own nasheeds, which is allowed them to convert as a group, which I think many Dawa efforts, especially in North America, and I don't want to name names. I don't want to, just focus on one Dawa, I guess kind of movement or ideology, and focus on that. But they kind of took this kind of monocultural approach, where Islam is the only culture, and we all have to wear. All the men have to wear like a white thobe and a kufi, and all the women have to wear black niqabs, and that's it. But at the same time, they brought in the culture from the region that they came from. So I'm not naming names.
I'd have to.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to say, in my experience, most Afrikaner converts to Islam, they tend to fall into that camp, the one you just mentioned. So it's usually a case of just completely distancing yourself from your cultural heritage, and just having like a clean break, and like a blank slate, and now you become an Arab overnight, or you become a Pakistani overnight. So that's most of the cases here that I've seen, and that's like one of the themes in Sharia that I'm particularly interested in, and that I think is useful for dawah, to not just to white communities, but to people who have sort of embraced modernity in the West. If you want to give dawah to them, is the issue of ahkamun nabi al-af'alun nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam al-jabiliyah, the actions of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that were dictated by custom, or by bimuqtada bashariyati, by his just urf, and in being a human being. So things like, if you read the Shafi scholar Abu Shama al-Maqdisi, he categorizes libas or albisa, clothing, under that. So the idea that if you don't wear the slit kurta, then, or you don't wear like an Arab style thobe, then you're mukhalifu sunnah, you're going against the sunnah of Rasulullah. That has to be done away with if you want to make any inroads into the Afrikaner community, for instance, or any Western community, you need to present an image to them that they feel comfortable with. And
Yeah.
it's not just one of conceding everything. You're not trying to fit in with them. It's completely valid in Sharia, to dress according to your culture as long as it's subjected to certain Islamic criteria. So that's important, and I think that's lost to the South African scholarly community when it comes to dawah efforts towards white South Africans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's the same thing here. Like, and I would say, like, when I converted to Islam, like many of the converts that I knew, they took this on. They said, Islam is one culture and we're going to follow it. And they started dressing, like they're from another part of the world, and that really created a lot of tension between them and their families. And they ended up burning a lot of bridges, not just white converts, but black converts as well. And looking back, they said, yeah, if like I have a good African American friend of mine who converted to Islam, and he said that when he first converted, like he would just dress in Pakistani clothes, and it really alienated him from his family. But I asked him, like, had there been like a mosque that was run by African Americans, like they have mosques that were run by African Americans, especially in the 70s all the way up until the 90s. It was an offshoot from the Nation of Islam. They converted to Sunni Islam as a group. Um, and he said, absolutely. If I was involved in that type of mosque, like it would have been a lot easier on my family. Um, and I think that a lot of, born Muslims, they mean very well and they want what's best for us. But I think the way in which they're trying to direct these converts is creating more harm than good, because they don't interact with their families, whereas we do. I mean, would you say that the white Afrikaners, like, they don't really interact with the Muslim community, or if they do, it's only on a really like superficial level?
Yeah, I believe it's at this stage still very superficial,
Yeah.
and I think because of just the nature of South African history, because of apartheid, and because color lines separated communities, that the interaction between Afrikaners and Muslims usually was in a setting where the Muslims that they meet are the employees, and usually they're not expressing Islam in any significant way. So they might have not even known that they are Muslim, especially in the Western Cape, where it's the Cape Malay community. So they weren't directly exposed to Islam or to the Muslim culture, as they don't know much about it. And the problematic results of that is that when 9/11 happened,
Mm.
uh, the impression they got of Islam is the sort of Bin Laden type impression. They got this image of these guys in the thobes with explosive vests strapped onto them, and uh, that's the kind of first impression that they got
Mm.
of Islam, even though they've been living side by side with Muslims for 400 years.
Mm.
So recently there was on Facebook, there was like a conversation that I saw where this white lady said to she said to this she just like asked an open question to Muslims, like, where were you? Why didn't you show us that Islam isn't like this? And the answer is pretty simple. We weren't, Muslims weren't really able to show you anything because
Right.
we're just so segregated from each other. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. But
Mm.
in the younger generation after apartheid, and now that things have been fully integrated, people do converse, and there's a lot of discourse in academia and on the media, and just day-to-day conversations that people have without being exposed to the Cape Malay culture, the Cape Malay Islam, the way Islam is practiced in the Cape. And there's even like TV, sitcoms on television that portray like the Cape Malay Muslim lifestyle and that kind of thing. So on a Afrikaans TV channel, the main Afrikaans TV channel in South Africa, Kyknet, they've got a show called Saint Ooster, where like the main protagonist is like a Muslim, and they've got this Muslim family, and they show the way they practice Islam in the Western Cape. So they're being exposed slowly but surely.
Mhm.
But there is that unfortunate issue of ignorance, and who do you blame for that? And at the end of the day, it's
Mhm.
difficult to lay blame on a specific person. Or
Mhm. 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 Wow. I mean, think about 9/11. I mean, it's created so many ripple effects. I mean, like you said, Muslims were living in South Africa for hundreds of years, and 9/11 happens, and all of a sudden it becomes this civilizational conflict just spreads around the world, even for communities that have been living with each other for 400 years. I mean, like Muslims in Canada are even just like maybe just 1% of the population. But after 9/11 happened, it was like this. It just ramped
yeah,
up tensions, and we're just now like I'd say that it's kind of calmed down a bit, but still like it's still there that like Islam is always seen as like a religion for non-whites and antagonistic towards whites, and that's what we're trying to to get away from and dispel those misconceptions. So,
yeah,
um, I mean, the framework we wanted to follow for I4E, inshallah, is that if and when we do get funding for this, is that at first, start out very small to have like an office space away from mosques where it would be run by European descendant converts. Um, and that way people would feel more comfortable going there to ask questions, and converts be able to address their issues. I mean, there would be a musalla in the back where any Muslim could pray there, but I guess the main reason why we're doing this is because I think in general Westerners, they just don't feel comfortable going to a mosque, even if they have a positive image
yeah.
of Islam. Would you say it's the same thing there, that it's just a mosque is just a place that non-Muslim Westerners don't go to, or whites don't go to? And for the Muslim communities, they generally don't think this way. They think everything has to be done in a mosque. Like they don't think outside the mosque. Like oh, you want your family to maybe we can help with your family. Let bring them to the mosque. They can talk to the imam. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Like, is it the same way in South Africa? Or
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, the idea of like mosque open days, it's a fairly new one in South Africa. Um,
Mm.
and there, there's efforts being made by the local Western Cape Muslim community to be more inclusive and to be more transparent and open and invite people in. But there's still that, I suppose, reluctance or hesitation from Westerners, or they might just come as like a cultural experience. It's sort of a bit exotic. We go to a mosque and see what it's about.
Mm.
Allah knows best. Maybe someone might, something might grip them and they end up becoming Muslim. But there isn't really a space for them to experience Islam in a way that could be very compatible with the way that they've viewed life before Islam. Of course, Islam requires some fundamental shifts in thinking for any person. It's at the end of the day it's Tawheed it's a non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
Various elements of our creed is obviously not non-negotiable, but in terms of the practice of Islam and the cultural element of it, there needs to definitely be a space where not only white South Africans, but all ethnic groups in South Africa have to be able to see Islam presented to them in a way that's non-threatening, and also that won't radically change their relationships with their families or the way that they have to dress and that kind of thing. So there's definitely a need for that here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, the mosque setup in South Africa, it's not, it's very different to how I see it in America or in Canada, where they have sort of community centers. Mosque is like a community center, and they'll have different activities there. We haven't really made the transition to that kind of setup here. We've still just got the mosque. It's open for the 5 awqat, and you come there, you make your salah, and you go out, and the muaddin locks the mosque, and
Mm.
so it's basically just a place of prayer.
Do they have iftar there, or during Ramadan?
Yeah, we do have. Look, like I said, there is a transition happening, and
Okay.
there's a lot of changes taking place. And for instance, the local Muslim council in my area have started, offering more frequent programs during Ramadan for the community to attend educational programs. And then we have Qiyamul Layl programs during Ramadan at night, which is, like from 11 p.m. till like 2, 3 in the morning. So there's a lot of activity in the mosque, but it's still, to a great extent, just a place where you go to make salah.
Mm-hmm. Right. I guess so what is the white population in South Africa? Like, what is a demographic makeup as a whole, and like in Cape Town as well?
Yeah. So whites in South Africa, we're kind of a small minority. I'm not 100% sure what the statistics are, but I'd say at most maybe about 15%.
Okay.
And that's a very, that's a high estimate. So at the absolute most, 15%, probably less than that. In the Western Cape, there's a higher concentration of whites than in other provinces. So the white population in the Western Cape province, where Cape Town is, would be a little bit higher, maybe 30 to 40%. Like I said, again, I'm not 100% sure of the statistics, but there's definitely a higher concentration of white people in the Western Cape than other provinces. And then in terms of the ethnic makeup or the background, you'll have your Afrikaners, which is a fairly recent community, because it's a community that, I'd say only really unified and took on an independent identity about like 200 years ago. So you have the Afrikaners whose heritage is, French, Dutch, Scottish, like a mix of those ethnicities. And then you'll have English-speaking South Africans, the descendants of, the English who came here during the colonial period. So yeah, there's English-speaking South Africans, Afrikaners, and then you have more recent arrivals, immigrants from Lebanon who were classified as white in South Africa, but Lebanese Christians that you'll find more up in Johannesburg. Greeks, Portuguese, all of them are part of the white community. So that's more or less the makeup of the white community in South Africa.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, because you said before that there, like a lot of these, opinions that they hold about Islam are linked, I kind of guess with Zionism. Like, I guess their thoughts on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is that they tend to be pro-Israeli, or is it mixed, or are they neutral about it?
Yeah, look, I think I attribute that to a religious shift in the Afrikaner community, because the sort of linchpin of Afrikaner spirituality and Afrikaner religiosity for all of its existence in South Africa was the Dutch Reformed Church. They were very staunch Calvinists, and it makes up a very significant part of Afrikaner culture. But after 1994, Afrikaners just became disenchanted with the Dutch Reformed Church for numerous reasons. Some of it has to do with politics. Some of it has to do with just value, sort of clash in values with the church, because the Dutch Reformed Church has started to try and present itself as being more open to modernity and, sort of moving with the times in, much like the Catholic Church did, with, sort of recognizing, also at least moving towards recognizing civil unions of gay couples, allowing women into the priesthood. So I suppose that sort of a lot of the more staunch and old school Afrikaners weren't too happy about that, and a lot of them left the Dutch Reformed Church. Okay. And they were snatched up by these sort of modern evangelical Christian movements, non-denominational movements that tend to be financed by Zionists.
Right. Like, they come from like the United States. A lot of them, where they that's where like a lot of the funding came from.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I see. So
the Pat Hagee, what's that? the like Pat Robertson, John Hagee, 700
John
Club kind
Agee,
of
yeah, 700 Club.
uh,
Yeah.
organizations.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Wow, you have quite an
yeah.
uphill
So
battle, Hassan.
that's what I'm talking about.
It's quite an uphill battle being a white South Afrikaner Muslim. I mean, may Allah reward you.
Yeah,
um,
I mean,
but yeah, I mean, but in general, though, I mean, like it sounds like the Muslim community in general, has really taken to you, and like they really they want what's best, for converts to Islam from all groups, which alhamdulillah, it's a great thing. Have you like talked to anyone about our concepts since you found out about us, or?
I've spoken to one of my teachers actually, who's also from Canada. Happens to be from Canada, and we were just, we touched on it. I mentioned to him that I'm going to be speaking to you about it, but he, we were speaking more about specifically dress, the Islamic dress and how that affects dawah to Western communities, and how converts are expected to assimilate into the Muslim community. So we were speaking about all the different aspects around that. So I've spoken to a few people, of course, my family members. I'm the only Muslim in my family,
Yeah.
but Alhamdulillah, most of my family have never really opposed me in my choice to be Muslim, and they've been very open-minded.
Alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
that's alhamdulillah, that's great. That's excellent. I mean, it's difficult to. I mean, that's good. I mean, my family was accepting too. I think sometimes there are a lot of Westerners who are interested in Islam. It's just they don't really
Yeah.
publicly express it. For them to accept Islam in their heart is one thing, but then to convert and then join a Muslim community, that's a huge undertaking, and there's so much fallout. So I think what you're seeing is that the ones who do actually convert and join a community and express their Islam publicly, they're more likely to have accepting families, because the ones that don't have accepting families, they're far less likely to ever talk about it. So,
Yeah.
wow, I mean, this stuff is really this is really fascinating. I mean, it's a totally there's a lot of similarities, but also differences, based on South Africa's history. Have you talked to white South Afrikaners in your community about Islam? Like, what's their take on it? I mean, is there a lot of interest, or has it just been mixed, or do you not really? Is it difficult to get to them too? I mean, can you hear me, Hassan? Oh,
I, I lost you there for a second. The audio is a bit
oh
choppy.
no, my last question was
Could you just repeat that question?
the giving dawa to white South Afrikaners. I mean, that seems like an uphill battle. I mean, do you have
Yeah.
you done any efforts on your own, or is it difficult to reach out to those in your community to talk to them about Islam? Or
Yeah. Look, as dawah as a responsibility, and as an obligation on a Muslim. For me, it really only dawned on me probably about 2 years ago that I am in the situation that I'm in, and I'm going to have to convey this message to my community, because لكل قوم هاد, for every nation they were sent a messenger, and it is, I did look at it from a point of sort of reluctance and hesitation, but I realize it has to be done. But I've outlined some positive points, or some reasons for optimism, and one of them is just from an historical perspective. If you can present to Afrikaners a case of how Islam and Afrikaans, the language, and the Afrikaner community have interacted throughout Afrikaner history, and that's a very interesting thing to research, because I don't know if you probably haven't heard this, because Afrikaans is like the least spoken language in the world, but the first book, actually, the first work of literature in the Afrikaans language was the Quran.
Wow.
And it was written in a local language called Jawi, so from Java. So it was the Javanese political exiles who wrote the religious instructions in the Dutch the sort of kitchen Dutch that eventually became Afrikaans, but it was written in Arabic script. So when you read it, you'd be reading it in Dutch, in colloquial Dutch. But if you see it and you can't read Arabic, you won't be able to read it.
Wow.
So, and that's something that's been getting a lot of traction in academia lately. You know, it's something that's people are becoming cognizant of it. You know, it's not something that's hidden and sort of a conspiracy theory kind of thing. It's gaining a lot of mainstream traction in Afrikaner academia, especially scholars of language. You know, they study these works. So there's also, you know, there's so many stories of, for instance, when the first Muslim exiles from the Dutch colonies like Malacca and Makassar came here. I believe it was Sheikh Yusuf of Makassar, who's sort of the patriarch of Islam in South Africa. When he was on his way over here on this boat, they had stormy seas. They were facing a storm, and the Dutch captain of the ship asked him to make dua. He pulled him and said, "Look, we're all going to die here. Just make dua, do anything." And you know, he made a dua and some dhikr, and the sea just became instantly quiet. It's like a karama, like a miracle, sort of supernatural event. And one of the Dutch East India Company employees on the boat actually became Muslim, and his name is documented. His name escapes my notice at this time, but you know, the story's been documented in their travel logs. So you know, there's numerous incidents like this where Muslims and Afrikaner community have interacted, and I think that needs to be brought to light more. And also just the Cape Muslim community needs to be exposed to Afrikaners more, and I think that's being done through a mainstream TV channel and through numerous ways. So I think that's a way of sort of bridging the gap and approaching Afrikaners.
Wow. Alhamdulillah, I mean, any step in the right direction is good. I think people are looking for something different, you know, especially European communities, because, you know, liberalism has just really just destroyed their communities, and it just created so many problems. I think, you know, again, on the Muslim community side, I mean, I think they're starting to reach out as well, too, because they're starting to realize that, you know, they have a lot in common with, conservatives. But thank you so much for your time today, Brother Hasan. This has been really fascinating stuff. It's no problem. Yeah,
thank you.
Jazakallah khair to you as well. And I'm so glad we were able to meet online. One day, maybe inshallah, if I have the funding, I'll come see you in South Africa, or you can come see me in Canada.
I mean, inshallah. No, you're welcome. I'd love that.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll just end it for today. I'm Robert from Islam for Europeans. May Allah, you know, bring good and khair out of this interview. We pray that all the entire Muslim community in South Africa, you know, stays in peace and security, and Islam grows there. And that, you know, we pray for the guidance of South Africa to Islam as well. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Robert from Islam for Europeans. Please subscribe. This has been a wonderful interview. We thank Brother Hasan for his time, and I'm signing off. Take care. I'm just gonna stop recording now.